Hello, everyone. This is Shelley again. I introduced myself in the last module, so I'm assuming you don't need all that background again. I'd like to use this time instead to talk about your passion as a leader. Work is going to be difficult, some days more than others. In fact, this whole COVID has made this year feel more difficult. Why do we do it? Why do we persevere? Why do we encourage others to do it? Because of our passion. As the leader, many are going to feed off of your passion for the work you do. And the greatest part about that is with the sharing of the flame only lets yours burn brighter. There are certainly going to be times when you find that flame feeling depleted and you feel like your passion is waning. And when that happens, you really have to reach out to others. Trying to lead in isolation is a recipe for disaster. While you may be the only one in your building or district with the same job title, I assure you there are colleagues around that are willing to support you. It's time to reach out to one of them and let their passion remind you how hot yours burns. I absolutely love quotes. I hope that if you're embarking on a leadership journey that you also recognize the incredible power of our words. I don't have to come up with the great words or put them together. There's so many brilliant speakers out there. You just need to find one that fits the message you're trying to convey and use it. That's a leadership tip right out of the gate. When I was a building principal, each month I'd find quotes to enforce or augment the learning of our staff meeting that month, and I'd print them out and put them in the staff restrooms. Talk about having a captive audience. In the last module, we talked an awful lot about school improvement planning. We talked about the PDSA, or the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, the need for the SMART goals, the culture necessary to make all that work happen, the whole ball of wax. And as we talked about, there are multiple stakeholder groups involved in school improvement planning. And depending on what administrative chair you're sitting in, your role would also vary significantly. The other factor is the size of your district. It may be school improvement planning process that is facilitated independently by each building principal. Sometimes there's central office participation, sometimes it's a district-wide gathering of all the leadership teams. Oftentimes you'll see the director of special education, the director of curriculum and instruction, sometimes the superintendent gets involved. Sometimes buildings do their school improvement planning with a little bit of guidance from central office, but then have the autonomy to work within their building leadership teams to make it happen. So, just to summarize and wrap that up, why do we do a school improvement plan? Well, our schools must continuously be nurtured and renewed. They cannot stay stagnant. Change is always going to happen. This can be done only by striving for clarity of vision and understanding of our current reality. We have to take the necessary actions with integrity and courage, and then work together out of warmth in heart and compassion. The school improvement plan embodies the current expression of an ongoing conversation among our school community. When you think about your school improvement plan as an ongoing conversation, the idea of continuous improvement is embedded in that. So, what is that conversation about? It's about our highest vision of our school. It's about our values and the structure and relationships between the different bodies within our school and within our district. It is how we realize our vision. The goals and actions, which are concrete and measured, reported on, and reviewed. Remember, what gets measured gets done. How the conversation will be continually reviewed and renewed. And then sometimes your school improvement plan must meet legal and regulatory obligations. That school improvement plan serves a lot of different functions. It is both an internal guiding document and the means by which we ensure our external regulation obligations are met. The audiences could be all the people within your school, it could be prospective school community members, other schools, or sometimes those regulatory bodies. Conversely, when we start talking about strategic planning, we're typically zooming out a little bit, and strategic planning typically happens at the district wide or the organizational level. The board is almost always involved, along with the admin team or some other identified leadership team within the district. When you're doing strategic planning, it is critical to reach out to your community and make sure that they have a seat at the table. This strategic plan for the school that documents the underlying direction for the school over a 5 or 10 year time frame. It's typically that wider lens, spans over a longer time frame, and I like to think of it as guideposts that the district continuously points to in their decision making, as in, that's where we said we wanted to be. Is this action going to get us closer to that guidepost? There are many different catchphrases and names of different strategic planning models, but to be honest, what you call it truly doesn't matter all that much. What matters is that the right people are at the table. Have you included the key elements necessary to make it a plan that can truly drive your organization forward? And did you come to the table with the mindset that you're truly doing this to become a better organization? You have to reflect and think, have you included a cross section of the community, both in demographics as well as those that are connected to the district already in one way or another, and in those that no longer have kids in school, don't work for the district, but still support the district through property taxes? Have you included your business partners? Did you intentionally select individuals that perhaps are critics of your organization? If strategic planning is really about where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, setting those guideposts and then plotting the course to get there, having a room full of cheerleaders is not likely to get you to paint a clear picture of your current reality. You learn and grow the most from those that challenge your thinking. While it may make for some more difficult conversations, in the end, the entire organization will be better because of it. When looking at strategic planning models, it's important to recognize them for the value that they bring. Getting a group together to talk about where you want to be in 5 or 10 years without a structure and process thought out ahead of time can lead to a meeting that doesn't feel very productive in the end. And in my experience, that's where you start to lose buy in and participation. Everybody is busy. Make sure when you bring people together, you've got a plan to maximize their efforts. The process is worth the effort. Some boards and districts feel strongly about having a third party facilitator for all or some of the process, and others are comfortable doing it alone. Again, one's not right and all the other wrong. It's a matter of knowing your community, your district, your team, and what is going to net you the best results. A component that is more unique to strategic planning than typical school improvement cycles is the focus on the community need, not just a focus on your student data, but on the needs of your community as a whole. We've been able to maximize the business partner relationships by bringing them to the table and realizing that they need employers as much as we need relevant work experiences to help engage some of our high school students that are not college bound and are not really convinced that giving their all in high school is worth the effort. This led to some fantastic business mentors coming into our schools and eventually with some kids with a whole new outlook on school, which led to youth apprenticeships, which led to students graduating with great jobs and assistance with post secondary training costs. It was an absolute win win scenario that never would have been possible had we not had the right people at the table as we talked about our strategic planning. We're going to talk more about public relations side of this in a bit, but one of the greatest outcomes of our strategic plan is the ability to lean on this plan when deciding if we should venture into a new area or initiative. We can quickly look at the 4 pillars of our plan and determine if the decision to be made aligns with our pillars or feels outside of them. If it's outside of them, then the decision becomes easy. As you watch the video, make sure that you're wearing the hat of the certification area that you are seeking. And then think about this process through the district-wide lens, not just the building. Additionally, take that next step and consider how it would feel as the building leader to be able to work with your building leadership team to develop, plan, and engage in school improvement planning when there is this level of clarity of expectations from the district. The essential questions and consider what evidence or process you will utilize to answer the questions as you work through a process with your team in your district. And when you've read through all the essential questions on the right, please click the link on the left at the fantastic examples provided. Reflect on the essential questions and see if you think the Sun Prairie example answers all of them. Finally, take a look at your own district's strategic plan. Are those questions answered there? The importance of effective communication absolutely cannot be overstated. The ability of a leader to effectively communicate verbally, in writing, and using their emotional intelligence is absolutely the foundation of a successful organization. Communication does not happen by accident. It's intentional, multifaceted, it's coordinated, and it is 100% on point. Flying by the seat of your pants can take you so far, but at some point, you're going to need to have your elevator speech ready of the key points that you want all stakeholders to be able to know. This, again, doesn't happen by accident. As the leader, your next role is to figure out how you can make sure all of the other leaders within your organization can also remain 100% on point and communicate the same message that you, as the leader, are trying to coordinate. Minute to read through these quotes. There are a million quotes about good communication, and a friend of mine that I respect a lot has a saying that has served me well over the years: clear is kind. Consider this for a moment. Sometimes telling people hard truths or having courageous conversations is extremely difficult, and we find ourselves beating around the bush or over talking in some way, trying to disguise or soften the message. But when you truly embrace the idea that clear is kind, you can have deep and heartfelt conversations while still making sure the person on the other end of the conversation has no doubt what your expectations are. Clear is kind. Always consider this in your messaging. If you want to be able to lift up those around you, you will communicate with the most clarity possible and make sure you give others all the information they need in order to take the next steps. If you want high functioning teams around you, you have to empower them to be high functioning. We know that research says you need to hear something 7 different times before we can really remember it and recall it and embrace it. In short, when we talk about what needs to be communicated to whom, how, when, where, why, all of those different pieces, no matter how much time, effort, and energy you spend on it, it is never enough. The most carefully thought out communication plans invariably still end with an email that said, "What was that you told us about?" You fill in the blank, X, Y, or Z. As a leader, you can sit here and beat your head against the wall thinking, "I already said that." Or you can go back to your communication plan and figure out where you missed the mark, that there were still people not in the loop. Truly, the need to be able to articulate each one of these bullet points cannot be overstated. When you consider the communication strategy of an initiative, particularly one as important as the strategic plan for your organization, you have to consider it through the lens of someone who knows very little about your organization, and then evaluate whether your plan is hitting the mark or not. Now, there is that old saying that says you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. That certainly holds true in school communications as well. You may have done everything right, and there are still individuals who don't engage on their side until it becomes important to them. I have not figured out a way to outsmart that. Perhaps one of you will solve it and send it back to me. Casa shared with us some fantastic tips for communication and how we can use communication to develop the culture inside our organizations and surrounding our organizations. There's a few things that I hold very true. I have told our staff since day one that I will very publicly celebrate our successes, like shout it from the mountaintop, social media, radio, wherever we can do it, publicly celebrate all the great things that are happening. And then we will privately address our challenges and our areas for improvement. So if there's something not going well, I promise that you will know about your part in it, but you certainly won't know everybody else's part in that. I have to tell you that you have to make that commitment to those within your organization and then be 100% faithful to it. The moment that you talk about people instead of to the people that need to change it, it takes many positive deposits to rebuild that trust. One of our pillars in our strategic plan is our people. When working on this work with the Our People Committee, we talked about meaningful recognition and what that looked like. And we talked and talked, how can the district help you to feel valued, respected, like you matter? What kind of recognition system could we come up with? And hands down, the staff said it was the personal notes that were left for them, either a handwritten note or whatever it may be, but it was genuine appreciation that was shared. So then it comes to staff appreciation, right? I tend to go overboard. I know a lot of leaders that spend countless hours on Pinterest or Facebook groups looking for clever ways to celebrate their staff. I still love hitting all 7 of the staff lounges for American Education Week with our themed decorations and treats. What matters here, it's not what you do that is as important as the fact that you do something. It has to be genuine or they're going to know. Find some way to share your appreciation and your care for your staff that fits with your personality and communicates genuine care for them. They're going to see right through a falsehood. They're going to know if something feels foreign to you. So make it genuine so that it matters for them. Otherwise, you're just adding tasks to your to do list for very little value. Let's talk a little bit about marketing. Marketing for schools? Why? When did that even become a thing? Well, I would say that that became a thing the moment that open enrollment became a thing, and vouchers and school choice, and the fact that schools have become increasingly competitive. Parents are widely being encouraged to vote with their feet, and we hear that advocacy on a national level and most definitely in our state as well. Remember that when parents vote with their feet, they take their state aid dollars with them. And so, this idea of open enrollment, vouchers, school choice is a big money system for some districts. Within the entire state, I would say, I think last time I checked, it was about 50% of states that were net winners in the open enrollment game. And that means that half of schools were net losers in the open enrollment game. So that's why marketing becomes a conversation to be had. There's a really strong connection between marketing and communication. You have to deliver your messages in many ways, finding some great graphics or taglines to kind of help people along to tell the story and to connect those good feelings and good things with your district. There's a lot of different ways to make this happen, but if you're like a lot of schools, that would simply be one more thing that you, as the principal or leader or superintendent, whomever wears that hat in the district, gets added to your plate. So, depending on the size of the district, and I'd say you have to be a little bit larger than Black River Falls to have a full time communication specialist or marketing person. What we've done the last couple of years is we use a student intern, and honestly, it's net us a lot of great results. We have a senior each year that is in our audio visual classes and is part of our youth reporting labs, and we actually work it like a youth apprenticeship. So we get a little money back from the state on it as well. And we get someone who's a lot more savvy with all of the social media platforms than I am. And we just feed her the content and they make that happen for us. So just one suggestion. Again, depending on the size of your district, you might have a full-time communications person. If you're a leader in that district, count yourself lucky because most of the time it's a little pieces added on to just about every other leader in the building. When it comes to marketing for schools, I really believe strongly that you can't allow state assessments or the state report cards to tell your story. You need to be able to tell your story to your local stakeholders, to anybody who's interested. And that's really what marketing is all about. It's about telling your story. I believe that we could have a 5 hour debate on whether social media is actually for good or for evil, but it is a pretty powerful marketing tool and it's incredibly inexpensive to utilize. Whether it's used for good or evil more of the time, I'd say that depends on the day. These are examples from the School District of Black River Falls of our strategic planning that's paired with a communication plan that's paired with marketing. We tried to give an identity to that strategic planning process and then created multiple materials that all tell the exact same story. Our goal was to scaffold all those different pieces to strategically give the people the amount of information that was most appropriate for them. For example, the Our Vision and Our Values sit prominently in the center of all the conference rooms within our district. In our conference rooms is where decisions are made, where discussions are had, where we meet with stakeholders, and it's important to always have our values in front of us to guide our way. Our vision is also there so that we always remember where we're heading. On the other side of the slide, each building has a huge poster of the goals with the vision and values articulated as well, and that is displayed prominently in the office of each of our schools. During our recent strategic planning process, we adopted 4 pillars of the strategic plan and then have been extremely intentional about organizing our work around these 4 pillars. Example, our pillars are student success pillar, our people, community engagement, and finance and facilities. And here's some examples of how we have organized ourselves. Our school board agendas are now organized by our four pillars. When the board president and I sit down to plan our school board agenda, if there's a topic that she would like to talk about, I can quickly say, which pillar does that fit under? And if it doesn't fit under any of the pillars, it's much easier to not give it a place on our agenda. And so it helps us to stay focused on our work. Our board committees are also organized by these four pillars. Again, it helps us to focus and filter out some of the rest of the noise. When we talk to staff about an initiative, we say, under the student success pillar, you helped us prioritize that X, Y, and Z. Therefore, during your PLC time, this is the next step toward attaining that goal. We feel like a very common theme is that schools feel like they're drowning under initiative fatigue. We work hard at packaging and communication so that the next step toward our goal does not feel like a new initiative, but instead we can celebrate what we've accomplished and then be ready to take that next step, always linking it to the appropriate pillar and to our goals. I talked in the previous slide about the scaffolding. So the document on the left on this one is a 11 by 17 poster that is laminated and hanging in every single classroom. Again, it has the vision and mission on the top. It has the goals under each of the four pillars, and then it has each of the initiatives for that 5-year cycle. They have more of the details than the other communication pieces because they're the ones digging in to do the work. The other side of this is a card that is titled Living Our Values. And this was created through the Our People Committee. And so, just a little bit about that committee. In our district, I facilitate that group, and it truly has representation from every single employee group in each of the levels throughout our district. So, there's elementary, middle, or elementary and secondary for the two levels, but then we have food service, custodial, teachers, aides, secretary, bus drivers, um, all of the different employee groups, and only two board members are allowed to be a part of that group because we want to make sure that they can talk freely without feeling that the conversations are going to be judged in any other light. And this is probably one of my most rewarding meetings that I have, and we do it 4 times a year. But that collection of all those people in the same room that are just focused on how can we make the school district of Black River Falls the best place to work possible? How can we continue to convince all of this staff, all of our new teachers, all of our veteran teachers, everybody to drive through so many other communities to come to work for us? So this committee does fantastic work, and they helped create this Living Our Values. They decided that they wanted to share it with all staff at our grand opening I think it was 2 years ago that we kicked this off with everyone. And this is kind of our version of a culture playbook. It could definitely be expanded on, but the way that it was developed was so powerful, and there was such ownership by the people on that committee. I just don't have the heart to change it already. So right now we refer to the Living Our Values an awful lot. So, what do we do now? We celebrate all of the progress that we've made, and then we go back to that PDSA that we talked about, Plan, Do, Study, Act. Where have we been? Where have we gotten to? And what are our next best steps? As you saw in the example earlier from Sun Prairie, there has to be some reporting of the data, right? If it's our strategic plan, we have to hold ourselves accountable if we are truly going to make any progress. So we developed this local scorecard that reports out our progress on each one of those pillars on an annual basis. Much of this information is from perception data. We do heavy surveys. We do our staff and our families every single year, and then we do our broader community every 3 years. And we take this feedback very much to heart. I have a saying that I have repeated to our community so many times, I think they know it by heart. I really believe that feedback is the gift you give someone when you respect them enough to want them to get better at what they do. And so when we ask questions like, is there anybody in our organization that you believe deserves special recognition? I love collecting those stories from families and from staff members because I get to use that great stuff all year in sending personal notes and celebrating those staff members that were called out. We also ask everyone the question, what areas do we need to focus our improvement efforts? And sometimes those are tough to read. Sometimes I like to do them with a little glass of wine in the evening. But in the end, if you don't ever ask the question, how are you going to know if you're serving your community in the way that meets their needs so that they can dig in and be supportive of the schools. So, two very strong feelings is ask for feedback often, but if you're not going to listen to the feedback, then don't ask because there's nothing that kills a culture faster than saying that you want people's input, but then not listening to it and going ahead with your plans anyway. So we've created these scorecards to use internally and with our board to mark our progress towards our strategic plan. That brings us to the next assignment where you are going to work on improvement planning. So this is the big picture, and then the next slide drills down into a lot more details depending on your area of certification. So basically the big picture is that you are going to articulate a multi-year school improvement plan or district strategic plan, again, depending on your certification area. But every plan, whether it's your strategic plan or your building improvement plan, has to review your district data. It's got to align with your district vision and mission. It has to address some specific needs that were identified through that data. There must be an evaluation plan of some sort embedded. Remember, we talked about SMART goals. And then don't forget that plan for communication as that plan is articulated. That next slide, I'm not going to add any sound to, but please read through with great detail what your certification area specifically is asking for you to do on this assignment. So after looking through the specifics for your area of certification, the rubric is the same for all of them. And so as we're reviewing an assignment, I like to start with a 3 as this is a proficiency-based program, and that means you need to get at least a 3 in order to show your proficiency. And so these are the components that must be there. The plan outlines the stages, identifies procedures, addresses the state report card, that evaluation indicator, and any other associated data, and includes multiple stakeholders. And it must also include a reflective commentary. That reflective commentary is kind of your, after the process has been fully articulated, what are you as the leader going to make sure that you're intentional about? Kind of notes about how you are going to facilitate that process is that reflection of the plan that you've articulated. So that is for proficiency, knowing that most people that are in a leadership program are overachievers and they want to make sure that they are doing all that they can to learn and grow. Let's talk through the distinguished. So the first one, first piece that is different under the distinguished is the plan includes a rationale for how the process promotes improvement. It uses those data points. It identifies the necessary resources. So how are you going to get there? What resources do you need to secure? It promotes the involvement with multiple stakeholders and includes the Board of Education. It addresses communication strategies and includes that evaluation loop. And then again, it includes that reflective commentary. So if you are stuck on the project, I suggest you go back through Module 4 and Module 5. There's some excellent resources that are linked in there. And good luck as you tackle this.